Welcome to Memorable Marketing by Media Group. On today's episode 8, we have a special episode. If you are interested in learning about how you can get your company listed on the stock exchange, if you want to know more about how to get an IPO, initial public offering, I'm very delighted to say that we're interviewing Jesper, who is a partner at Kapital Partner in Copenhagen. And he talks about the journey of getting from a startup to a public offering on the stock exchange. And he has found a shortcut to make it shorter and less expensive and less resourceful to get listed on Nasdaq. A couple of things I want to point out. Jesper had very little time and he told me only to spend 25 minutes on it. So the episodes get started right away. Not a lot of time for chit chat in the beginning. It's go business from the beginning. But Jesper is very interesting in his perspective. And listen to this episode now. Welcome to Memorable Marketing by Media Group, and welcome to episode 8. Today we got a special guest. We got Jesper from Kapital Partner, who's based in Copenhagen. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesper. So let's start by you telling a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, my background is started out as a lawyer, ventured into investment banking, and have been in investment banking for more than 20 years, I believe. And now I'm a partner at Kapital Partner, which is a corporate finance shop based in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Okay. And when you say corporate finance, what do you do? What are your services?
Yeah, our primary service is to help find funding to companies. And we have a special focus on making IPOs. For small companies, very small companies, so we call them venture IPOs.
Okay, and you go to them this journey from very small companies all the way to an IPO. How long is the average time for a company on that journey?
The average time is basically depends on how fast we can get it through the stock exchange, which is usually Nasdaq or the FSA, but it's around 5 to 6 months.
Wow. Okay. So that's pretty fast turnaround. So in that meantime, do you help them grow in their business, or do you get them at a point where they are ready to go? Or
yeah, we can say we kind of spend, breaking up is like the first month to get them organized, ready to receive funding. It's a private placement or public funding, doesn't really matter. And then we spend a couple of months preparing the prospectus. Or the investment memorandum, depending on regulatory issues. And then we have to get it through the FSA or the stock exchange, and then we're done.
Okay. Wow. So that's a quick turnaround. What are the, if I'm a potential company and I'm thinking about going IPO one day, what would I need to do before contacting someone like you? What kind of X do I need to put in order to get my things right for you?
Yeah, in order to get funding from investors, you need to have, your organization right. So you can actually execute on the plans you have. The budgets, are they for real? You can say that, can you actually do it? Because one thing is if you go to a venture fund or whatever, and they know you have pumped up everything. But at a stock exchange, you're closely watched, and if you don't deliver, it has consequences. So we really look into that. So it's the organization, the plans, the budgets, everything needs to be, right, or we need to get it right. And usually they don't have a board, so they have to have a good board of directors. So that's something we work on a lot.
So good governance and good compliance. Yeah,
you can say we have almost companies that are close to being startups. Two guys and a seller who have made some great software, and instead of getting funding through the usual venture capital, the business angel, usually they have business angel funding, but we can be actually IPO the next step. So it is like a seed round or a Series A round that is done through an IPO.
Okay, very interesting. Just going back to what you were saying before, so did you help start the Kapital Partner, or did you?
Yes, I was one of the founders. And we started out basically because the economic ecosystem in Denmark didn't really work. Denmark is a very small country. You can get the first seed funds, but then it's getting difficult. And people get great ideas in Denmark, but getting the funding to go global is difficult. So we kind of did what they did in Sweden, was to make these venture IPOs where you raise very small amounts, but you do it through an IPO.
And is that because the traditional banking system is not really set up to support these kinds of companies?
Yeah, you can say banks don't lend money to startups. That's the same thing all over the world. But you have increasing number of business angels that supports the whole sector. But once you have raised, something like $1-2 million US, then there are very few investors left to fund you, as you have to go abroad. And that's almost more difficult because all investors want to invest locally. So it's getting more and more difficult. And if you have made a product, you've raised $2 million, you've actually developed your product, everything's good, and now you have always some customers, local customers, and now you want to go global. Well, that requires $10-20 million. They're difficult to get. And that's where the public funding through an IPO comes in.
Okay, very interesting. How many do you take through every year on that journey?
We take a couple of companies every year.
Okay, because it's a long journey. I mean, it's 6 months, but it's a tough journey. There's a lot of things that have to come together to do that.
Yeah, I think we do a lot of the work, but I think for every company, they think it's a tough journey because they have to get everything. It's all the details need to come into place.
Both the scrutiny and the regulations and the spotlight you're getting on a stock exchange as opposed to.
Yeah, and you have to write a prospectus. Obviously, we do most of the writing, but it's still 100-page documents. You have to.
Sure. Exactly. All right. And so that's your main business. Do you provide other services at your company?
Yeah, we do. This is ordinary, if you say so, corporate finance. Also with a private placement. So we get funding from other kinds of investors, or mergers and acquisitions, or ordinary financial advice regarding loan structures and financial structures and so on. Yeah, and I think we're pretty well known in Denmark because the growth stock exchange, which is called Nasdaq First North, which is like a sub exchange for Nasdaq. We were the ones who got it going again in Denmark. It had been like totally dead for 10 years, so we got it all going, and so we created it again.
So, but how? So, it's through your network you get new clients to come in, new potential people to come in. Do you also bridge between investors, so people who have money who might go in and give some money before an IPO?
Yeah. A lot of times you need to get funding because if you have really a growth company, you don't have funding for the next 6 months plus the funding you need to actually do the IPO. So we need to get in there and do what we call a pre-IPO funding.
Okay. And so this pre-IPO funding, is that also a lengthy process that to get that started?
Not as long as the IPO, but there's this huge difference between making a private placement, which is the pre-IPO is, and an IPO. The IPO, it takes these 6 months, but it's like you have the time schedule from day one till the first day of trading. When you start out. So it's kind of strange also for the company saying, okay, it takes 6 months, but I can tell you the date when you get the money. And why can I tell you the date? Because at an IPO, we reach out through marketing and everything else, we reach out to hundreds and thousands of investors, which each chip in I think the average is like $4,000 US. So it's not a lot of money. So we don't need a lot of these several hundred thousand investors to actually chip in. Why we go to private placement, we need to talk to, even though we have a network, but you have to send out emails, you have to call them, you have to have webinars, you have to do things, and it just takes time. So usually the pre-IPO will take 3 months.
Oh, wow.
So we try to do it simultaneously with the IPO if that is needed because we don't have time.
Wow. So the part of the service you get if you go to you is to go out and get access to this incorporated network of thousands of people who can go in and help an average of $4,000, and of course go on that IPO journey. Okay, that makes it interesting. So you're based in Copenhagen, but you work in the Nordic countries, or do you work globally with what you do? Because I noticed your website had, of course, English translation, but also Chinese. I saw that.
Yeah. And the reason is that we most of our business is for Danish companies and listing them in Denmark. But Nasdaq First North is a huge success. I think it's nowhere in the world where you list so many small companies. And so it is. And one thing is you list them, but there's also liquidity afterwards. The problem for all stock exchanges, I work within most stock exchanges, is that small cap companies, they have no liquidity. And that's basically why you list it, because there's liquidity, you can buy or sell the stock. But for these small companies on First North, which is like a micro cap companies, that's a huge liquidity. So foreign companies, call us or contact us, say, okay, that sounds interesting. Can we list on Nasdaq First North? And people want to have the Nasdaq branding, and they get the Nasdaq branding. It is Nasdaq. It's Nasdaq New York. It's the same thing here in Denmark. It's just they have the possibility as a very small company to list, and it also doesn't take a lot of time. Going to New York, a huge IPO, that takes a year to 2 years, probably more than 2 years. 2 years, while we can do it in 5 to 6 months.
Oh, wow! I was not aware of that. So that's very interesting. And how many new companies are registered on this Nasdaq First North every year, approximately?
Oh yeah, it has boomed. And I think that on First North in general is at least here in Scandinavia. It's also in the Baltic countries, but Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. I think to this year alone, I think we are almost up to 80 companies or something like that.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a lot of companies. Wow. Yes, but in order to reach all the 100,000 different customers or potential investors to go in and give the average of $4,000, how do you get hold of them? How do you build that network?
Yeah, one thing is we have our small network of investors, but the main way we market is through online marketing. So we do banner ads primarily and social media ads, so we target the customers that way, or the potential customers, basically investors.
Potential customer, which is the investor. So you use online marketing. So you run a campaign, as you said, through a banner ad where you are advertising this next big company, this next company you're working with coming up, or do you advertise them to get into your investment portfolio? How do you do that?
No. This is we're targeting, just saying this is a new IPO. You have a possibility to invest. Click here to get more information, so you can get the prospectus or the video or whatever, or go to the banks, because they cannot buy the shares on our website. They need to go to their own bank and come with a subscription there. Okay.
But in order to go to your website, they give you an email address, then they're allowed to download the prospectus, and is that how it works?
Yeah, basically it's very simple. A banner ad, click here, and you come to the landing page, and on the landing page, it can be either a one we have created or a company's own webpage, and then you have the information. But still, you cannot buy the shares through the company website or through our website. You need to go to your own bank, online bank or whatever, and then subscribe for the shares there.
And you're doing the banner ads and you're doing the social media. So on social media, is it also, here's a new IPO, this company we think is very exciting, do you want to find more, click here? Is that the kind of ads you're running?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It's just to get it known out there that it's a new IPO and what it's about.
And you target certain investor profiles and characters who are into investment. And what countries are you doing this in, if I may ask?
Well, it depends on where we market the IPO, and that's regulatory. But usually, if you raise, small amounts like $10 million and we don't need to go beyond Denmark if it's a Danish IPO. But it can be Some can always be higher, but it can also be that we see there's a reason, the company's product or their clients or whatever, have a broader reach already. So it can make sense to go to Sweden, or it can be like, oh, this is a green investment, and that's, really hot topic. So let's also go to the Swedish investors. We also go to Norwegian investors or Finnish investors. But, obviously marketing goes up the more countries you reach out to. So the amount we need to raise also needs to be higher in order for that to make sense.
And Media Group is helping you with these banners and these social media. And how long have you been working with Media Group?
Well, I think almost since the first IPO. So we did something like 4 years ago. So they do all the retargeting, the programming of the banner ads and the social media ads. Figuring out which target group is the best one, and it changes from IPO to IPO. You can say that young people have really become interested in investing, which is good, but it's the older ones who's got the money and the time. So we have to find a mix.
That's true. Do you think the younger ones, that because of the whole Wall Street bets on Reddit, is that where that's coming from, or are they just...
That's one thing, and the other thing is that COVID-19 has changed the whole investment environment a lot. People were home, had nothing to do, and nothing to bet on, because there was no soccer, no football, no ice hockey, nothing you can bet on. So people started betting on the stock exchange, and they stuck because you don't have to wait until the game starts or ends. You can bet 24/7.
That's true, and you can ride it all the time, or you can get out when you don't want to be part of it anymore. Huh, interesting. Okay, that's really good. All right. So you said it's a small amount to raise $10 million. Do you sometimes raise more, or what's the average amount you raise?
Yeah, I think the average is probably around $10 million on the IPO, and then sometimes you raise more on the private placement before that. But so it's really small amounts. And the reason why you could raise more. But the whole thing is not to raise more than you actually need, because the whole idea is that the share price shall go up. So next time you raise funds, it will be at a higher valuation. So you start out with $10 million, and then you maybe raise $10 million or $20 million 12 months after the IPO, and then you just continue like that.
Makes sense. That's good. I know I promised you we could only interview for 25 minutes, and the time is almost up. So is there anything you want to say here before the final 5 minutes?
Well, I think that doing this marketing of an IPO is very special. It's not something it basically not they usually do in Sweden. It is, I think, more or less a Danish concept. That you get out there and promote the IPO directly to the retail investors. Because an ordinary IPO, it will be the investment bank who's doing it, and they will use their own network, their own clients, customers, to push the stock to them, while we go out and also need to get new investors on board. People have never been investors before. And that's where this online marketing has been proved very successful. People understand now that what is a stock, what is an IPO. Okay, I can actually get in on the action. It's pretty easy to set up a bank account and start trading, and this is a possibility for me. So I think that is, I think that is very special for the Danish market, for the stock markets, that you actually do this marketing, but it has proven extremely effective.
Also, the entry of the barrier to entry is getting smaller, because now you have apps on the phone. You can invest through an app, or there's many ways you can do now, where before you had to personally know someone in an investment company, and they had to vouch for you. You had to deposit some money, and then you can start investing. Where here, it's a little more different, and you can invest smaller amounts, I presume, as opposed to in earlier times.
You see, the minimum ticket is like $1,000 US. So it's very small amounts, and you also say, okay, Reddit is used in the US. It's not so big here in Scandinavia, but people use Facebook groups. So there's a lot of Facebook investor groups. And the good thing about online marketing is that you can actually, better attack these groups because they will see it on Facebook, on the social media, on the banners, and so it gets into that system, which a newspaper ad doesn't.
That's true. All right. Yes, but I promise to let you go in about 1 minute. So I'll keep that promise. It was absolutely a pleasure to speak to you. If anybody's interested in getting an IPO and finding out more, we have links in the show notes and how to get to Kapital Partner and how to work with them. And yes, but I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with us and giving us your time today. Thank you.
Well, I thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, Zane, after each episode, regular listeners or viewers will know I bring you in. You are our little podcast producer. You are our person who makes everything sound good. And I always like to hear what you think about today's podcast, today's episode.
Yeah, this was a really interesting one. Yeah. I have had very little exposure to the world of investment, and particularly getting companies from startup to listed on any stock exchange. So This is a really interesting one to kind of see a little bit of the background on that.
Yeah.
What really interested me is, this idea of exposing potential IPOs to retail customers rather than looking for like the big angel investors.
Yes.
That's a really interesting idea.
I like that. And also it seems like a shorter journey. And
I think that digital marketing is a really good place to examine that from, because how do you find these people that aren't going to invest $100,000 but maybe have $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to invest in things? And I think digital marketing is a great way to kind of access that broader market and kind of, they said that people call them, and that is kind of how they reach customers. And I think that the brand knowledge and brand awareness, that's where that they can rely on that in their digital marketing is a show of their strength.
Yeah, I think that when people are calling him, it's more when they want to get an IPO, but it's the money that they want to try and chase after for retail. I think that's a brilliant way of doing it, also because it's smaller amounts and it's become, as I said, a smaller barrier to entry. And also, I didn't know that there was this smaller Nasdaq version in Copenhagen, or in Scandinavia at least, where the time is 6 months to get to listed, as opposed to New York, where it can take up to 2 years, you said.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something I know very little about, so I was very interested in listening the whole way through.
Okay.
And especially talking about, just $10 million is a very, very small amount. It's a small amount, $10 million.
Small amount, so.
But obviously, like, this is having been made more aware of the current trends through the Wall Street bets and controversies around that. It is very interesting to see what is happening on the stock market now with the new generations that aren't exactly as liquid as past generations have been, getting involved and making themselves known.
Exactly, but also very interested in coming to the market. Yeah, that's really good, and I think that's good diversity there, and hopefully they can bring something else than just the money, also a voice and a different way of being looked at.
It's one way to vote with your wallet is to pick what kind of business what kind of business you choose. Yeah,
exactly. All right, Zane. Thank you so much for your thoughts and feedback on that.
You're very welcome.
It's always a pleasure to work with you, Zane.